Indeed, we had a long and good and intense discussion about the situation in the Middle East. The overall position was very clear. Israel is a democracy attacked by Hamas, a terrorist organization. Israel has the right of self-defense in line with international law and international humanitarian law. There was a strong call from the leaders that Hamas must immediately release all hostages without any preconditions. And it was clear that through its terrorist activities, Hamas is also bringing harm to the Palestinian people. Hamas has provoked a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. For the Commission, it's very important that we continue to intensify our efforts to deal with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The aid needs to reach Gaza unhindered and quickly. The 56 tons of aid that our two first humanitarian flights brought to Egypt have now been delivered to Gaza. This is important, but of course, more is needed. We will have our next two flights. They are scheduled for today, Friday, and more are planned over the following days. Furthermore, we are progressing fast on the implementation of the additional 50 million euros of extra humanitarian aid for Gaza. You might recall the humanitarian aid for Gaza was planned 25 million, and a week ago approximately we tripled it to 75 million euros. Now these additional 50 million have to be implemented. Tomorrow we will sign contracts worth 40 million euros with UN agencies, and the other 10 million will be used for the air bridge flights that I just mentioned. We also discussed with leaders the real risk of regionalization of the conflict. We need to continue working intensively with partners. It was good to hear the intense outreach all the leaders described with different partners in the region, most importantly with Egypt. The current situation reinforces our determination to work on a comprehensive and mutual beneficial partnership with Egypt. We are in the course of developing the different elements of this partnership. It is important for us to have Egypt as a beacon of stability in that region. We also discussed the fact that the crisis has implications on the EU's internal security. Leaders described the rapid spread of online hate speech and terrorist propaganda, with the risk that this translates into violence and terrorist acts. With the terrorist content online regulation and with the DSA, we have tools. We have tools that we can use to ask the platforms to take, for example, terrorist content off the platform. Our experience with Europol is that there is an immediate response when flagged terrorist online content. So in less than an hour, in most of the cases, the platforms are taking down this content. This is good, but it requires intensive work online to discover the difficult content and, of course, to flag it to the platform members. We also had a discussion that included the fact that a very significant increase in anti-Semitic acts is observed. We must continue to be very vigilant on all other hate crimes, and therefore I took the opportunity again to urge leaders that we can now agree on the Commission's proposal to add hate speech and hate crime to the list of EU crimes. Now, indeed, the second topic we discussed was the MFF revision proposal. We should keep in mind that when the MFF was designed and decided, it was approved in 2020. You all know since then the crisis we have lived through, the pandemic. A major economic crisis has barely been avoided. We have a major land war in Europe. We went through a massive energy crisis. We had the highest influx of migrants since the migration crisis 2015. and now the crisis in the Middle East. In other words, the world is a completely different place compared to 2020. We are fully aware that these crises do not only affect the limits of the budget of the European Union, but also the member states have a lot of constraints what that is concerned. We discussed the priorities. What are the priorities? Let me recall the most important one. Of course, it is the 50 billion euro support for Ukraine for the next 4 years. Second, migration is a priority. Migration needs a European response, and this needs funding. We have several times acknowledged the need for a comprehensive partnership with countries of origin or transit, and this needs funding too. But we also need additional financing for our growth plan, for example, in the Western Balkans, and of course for the border management for member states facing migratory pressures, and finally, last but not least, also for the pact the moment it is agreed. The third priority concerns natural disasters and humanitarian crises, the floods, the droughts, the earthquakes, the wildfires. You all were witnessing this. This led to the fact that now we are already using funds of 2024 to give relief to member states with these experiences of either natural disasters or humanitarian crises. So we need here an increase of the funding too. And the fourth topic is competitiveness. Here it's important to be very vigilant that we keep the clean tech industry in Europe. You know the pressures that are on the clean tech industry and the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act is relatively fast and predictable because it's tax breaks. We have therefore two elements that we can use on the European level, not having taxes on the European level. The one is state aid, and the other one is our proposal of STEP, a fund that needs an initial funding to be then leveraged and gives then the access to different European funds for companies that need an answer or an alternative for the Inflation Reduction Act. So these were very different topics that we discussed intensively today, and thank you for the moment.
Thank you, President.